Hello, I'm just doing a quick video on completing the square and the basics of it, how it works, how to do it, etc. So, I'm gonna work through this equation I've got down in front of you, x squared plus 2x minus 24 equals 0, and just talk a little bit on what our approach should be and how to complete it. So, start off with, I've got the general formula for completing the square set up here, and this formula obviously just looks like a bunch of letters if you don't apply it to anything, but it makes a lot more sense once you understand the process. So I'm just going to write down basically the exact same thing, but just leave gaps for all those bits that we don't know. Plus equals 0, and just talk about how to figure out those bits. So the c is probably the easiest. It's just in our equation already. It's the constant. Easy to remember because c, constant, stands for, I'm going to use a different color highlighter here. So negative 24 is going to be our c. Just chuck it in here, negative 24. Put some brackets around it and color code so you can see it later. Now the b is actually our 2 over here. So you can see in the equation above it says b over 2, which obviously b divided by 2. And 2 divided by 2 is just 1. So we're just going to chuck a 1 over here. And now b over 2 squared is 1 squared. And now we've filled it in nice and easy. We've got x plus 1 squared minus 1 squared plus negative 24 equals 0. Now we're going to rewrite this. Let me just first color these bits in. Alright, sweet. Negative 24 equals 0. And we're going to clean this up. X plus 1 squared minus 1 minus 24 equals 0. X plus 1 squared minus 25 equals 0. Now, the hardest bit of completing the square is actually getting this original bit over here, this formula, down, because once you've got that, it's just basic algebra to complete the rest of it. Now, this next step, take the 25, add it to both sides. X plus 1 squared equals 25. And now you want to square root, but make sure when you're square rooting both sides, this left side's fine, but this right side, you need the plus minus in front of your surd, because both positive and negative 5 squared equals 25. So x, subtract 1 from both sides, negative 1 plus minus root 25. And root 25 is, of course, 5, so I'm actually going to just put that more simplified version in there. So it's negative 1 plus 5 or negative 1 minus 5, which is negative 1 plus 5 is 4, or negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. So we've got our two answers, negative 6 and 4. And we're just going to double check that quickly to make sure we've done everything right. This is really important, especially in exams, because you can make one small mistake, and even if you understand the question and understand what you're meant to do, if you've made a small mistake, you still don't get the marks for it, and you don't get a second chance most of the time. So we're just going to plug it back in to this original equation, x squared plus 2x minus 24 equals 0, but with replacing the x with either of these numbers. So start with 4 squared plus 2 times 4 minus 24 equals 0. That gives us 16 plus 8 minus 24 equals 0, which is 24 minus 24, so it does check out. Erase this to clear some space for us again. And do the same with negative 6. Negative 6 squared plus 2 times negative 6 minus 24 equals 0. 36 minus 12 minus 24 equals 0. And that's 36 minus 36, so it's 0 again. So both equations check out, and therefore those are our final answers. Now, I'm just going to talk through why we do this, why this works, because a lot of people memorize all these formulas, but they don't actually figure out the reason behind them, and it actually hurts them later on, because yes, this formula up here, you can memorize it and just apply it, but it makes things a lot more complicated. So first things first, we're going to go through the separate formulas and how they combine to make this bigger one. So a plus b squared is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Now this a plus b squared bit looks very similar to this starting section here in the formula up top. This is our x plus b over 2 squared. Now why isn't it just x plus b? Well, we'll take a look here. If we just had x plus b instead, so we'll rewrite it, x plus b squared, we get x squared, which we do want, plus 2bx plus b squared. If we put in an actual number, use the example we used earlier, if we do x plus 2 squared, that's x squared plus 4x. Oh wait, we've run into a problem. This 4x doesn't match this 2x over here. We're trying to keep the equation as the same, just formatting it differently. So what's half of 4x? 2x. So if we halve this b inside here, change it to x plus 1, we get x squared plus 2x. And then we can finish it off with plus 1, because 1 squared is 1. Again, another problem. This plus 1 we don't actually want because it's not in this original equation we have here, over this side, right? So what we're going to do is subtract that 1. So that's how you get x plus 1 squared minus 1 and then minus 24, because that negative 24 is just carried down into your new equation regardless of what's going on in the rest of it. So that's all we're really doing, rearranging things. It still works out the same, but the reason why this is useful is, for example, let's say you have x squared plus 2x equals 0. If you're trying to work this out, you don't have your usual quadratics to work with, and so you might get yourself a bit stuck. There are multiple ways to do it. For example, a much easier way, now that I'm looking at it, would just be factor out the x. But another way is to actually give yourself something to work with by completing the square. And you can go x plus half of this 2, 1 squared, minus the squared version of this, which is 1. And there's no constant here, so you can actually just leave it. X plus 1 minus 1. Add 1 to both sides. X plus 1 squared equals 1. X equals, don't forget the plus minus, root 1. X equals negative 1 plus minus 1 equals negative 2 or 0. Right? So it just gives you another thing in your gallery to work with when you're solving equations. And it also means in a test, if they specifically say by completing the square, which they often test you on, you know how to do it confidently and can double check your answers without worrying too much. So I suggest practice a little bit with this. It isn't exactly like the #1 skill that you're going to use in maths, especially relating to quadratics, but it is definitely useful and will be tested on, and so to be able to do it quickly and effectively will save you a lot of time in tests to work on the more complicated questions. Hope that explains things.